All right, I'm going to get going as folks still wander in the room. For those of you who stayed in the room, this is the next step to the presentation you guys just saw. Let me introduce myself. I'm Randy Harris. I am Director and Product Manager of SSO for General Electric. And I just give you a little insight into myself. I've been doing this identity stuff on and off for most of my working career. Back in the late 90s, General Electric got together and said, how do we make an identity system that can be used across 23 enterprises and make sense? And we got together, we came up with what was called SSO, which was a brand new term then, and we actually filed for the patent, and we missed getting the patent by a week, okay? A week we missed it. But in the same frame, we came up with so many novel ideas at that time. I've got 3 software patents out of some of that effort back in the day. In my working career at GE, I've been able to be a department manager of a business department that was overseeing operations. I've been a leader of administrative leader of a sales department. I was e-commerce leader for a financial services institution. I've been a black belt because, you know, GE black belt back in the day. I've been a master black belt. So and I'm blessed by the fact I've had a very diverse career. And now I work in cybersecurity, and our identity systems are part of the cybersecurity systems. There's 2 choices of where you can put your identity management systems. Either it's in the IT operations side or in the cybersecurity side. We're in the cybersecurity side, and you always have to counter the guys that say, lock the door, don't ever let them in, against, yeah, we have to be able to use our systems. A little known fact, the identity teams at GE are pretty strong. Right now, at this particular moment, there's 2 other people presenting that I've worked with at GE in the identity teams, Tom Sheffield and John Lettinen. So if you get bored with what I have to say, go see those guys because they're good, okay? I'm using GE slides because a lot of people say, what does GE do now, right? We don't sell light bulbs anymore. So what does GE do now? So I got the permission to use GE slides. I don't think anybody in here is going to buy a jet engine or a 25-ton magnet, so I don't think I'm, crossing boundaries. But I'm going to spend a little time talking about why you want to build self-service and how to do it, and how to do it very securely, because it's very important that this is secure. And a couple of examples of what we've done. When you talk about self-service, let's think about this for a second. And I want to first get a little poll of the audience so that I can tailor some of this. How many of you guys in this room are in cybersecurity? Oh, okay, we got a good. How many of you are executives, which means you aren't really in cybersecurity? Okay, there we go. And so, what you want to do, and how many of you guys are engineers? You're in there making it work and figuring out a way to break it every day. There we go. So I'm going to try to make it kind of a broad general talk, and if you have other questions, come out and talk to me or ask them at the end. How many of you guys, and this is going to be a show of hand exercise, love going to the DMV, filling out a form, and sitting and waiting for your number to be called? Let's see a show of hands of people who love that. That's what I thought. All right. How many people like filling out a tax form and sending it off to the IRS and not getting your money back for more than a year, like my father? Yeah, okay. Or, as the previous speaker says, get on the phone to the customer service unit, you give a bunch of private information to the IVR, go on hold, give more private information to the IVR, go on hold, and then you get asked the same questions again by the customer service rep. And who knows what they're writing down while you're on that telephone, what kind of customer service unit it is. So self-service is so powerful, and it can be used in so many different ways, and people often miss the opportunities. It's allowing customers to serve themselves without help from workers. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be fully automated, and I'll give you a couple of examples where it doesn't necessarily have to be. Why do we do this? What's the real value of this? It increases the acceptance of our offerings. We at GE actually have an app that is used to integrate into our SSO infrastructure. So it's not an HA capability, it's things we take down to maintain periodically. And when we're down, we always offer an offline manual way of doing it. Nobody ever uses the manual way. Now that they can do it themselves, they don't want us to do it for them. It improves security. When you're building these things, you have to say, how do I make this more secure? What are the things that are the problem now? How do I make sure I have the right person here? And you have your security team right there with you. And what is the initial goalpost isn't the goalpost a year later. It isn't the goalpost next year, right? You always are stepping back and saying, where are the holes? Where's the fallout? What do I need to do to make this better? And you can do it risk-based. You know, one size doesn't have to fit all, right? If I've got an application, I'm just going to use my self-service portal as an example. If I've got an application that is customer-facing, where the company has exposure, not necessarily to data, but giving away sums of money or whatever, I can step up the auth. If I have an application that's used by 50 people in a small business we have somewhere, I don't necessarily have to step off the auth. I can tell you without any doubt that really makes a difference in protecting the company. And last but not least, I stand here and can quantify for anybody in this room, I have saved the company, my teams, not me personally, have saved the company millions of dollars year over year of what would have been dead expense with people doing stuff. Self-service makes sense. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir. We're all consumers. We'd rather do self-service. In my role, I oversee all of the identities at GE. I oversee our employees. I oversee our contractors. I oversee our suppliers. I oversee our distributors. I oversee the people who buy our product, the people who service our product, and pensioners. That's a broad span. And we do the life cycle and we do all the administration. We're the auth-in for more than 3 million identities. Not small work. It's sometimes will keep you up at work at night. But my true customers are my business partners. I service, as in a corporate role at GE, I service right now about 9 different businesses, and they each have identity leaders. And they come to me and say, this is strategically where my business needs to go. Now, I help their app developers, I help their end customers, I do all of those things, but at the same time, I need to work with them in developing the right focus, the right self-service offerings to help them succeed. Where their pain points are should be my pain points. And at the same time, on the other side, I have the cybersecurity team going, keep the bad guys out, right? Every day, keep the bad guys out, however you can keep the bad guys out. So, those two are my key customers. And it's important that you keep that focus because in the absence of having that, the people who complain become your measuring system. They're the ones that, oh, well, this one person complained. But 99.9% of the transactions worked except for this one person that complained. Where do you look for opportunities? Well, I'll give you three examples that I've developed in my working career. And one is a customer-facing system. I worked in a financial services institution, and we determined many years ago that we were going to start delivering information on the internet. Now, that was actually kind of my letter to the president, but we were the second insurance company to actually put that stuff out on the internet. And over the years, I can tell you, it makes me laugh. The controls we had in place when we put that out, and what are the controls that have to be in place now today? In those days, you could just go look and see your stuff, and now we developed that into a true e-commerce website where you could do financial transactions and do all of that. That's a normal consumer transaction. We all know that. The next one I kind of have talked about a little bit. It used to take anywhere from 15 to 45 days to integrate an app into our infrastructure. Right now, we have right at 4,500 active apps integrated into our infrastructure. At one point, GE sold off GE Capital, and at one point, we had over 10,000 active apps in our infrastructure. I had 30 contractors doing app integration, and it was a nightmare. The customers hated it. It took forever, and every app got integrated with a different security model, with a different way of doing it. And by building this portal, we created consistent security models. We created a consistent thing. And our customers love it. We went from 30 days to 5 minutes. If you know how SAML works, if you know how OIDC works, you literally, if you have the right criteria, can integrate an app into our infrastructure in 5 minutes with great controls. When we first started off, it was like, okay, to make it easy to get into it. Now we have risk rating. Based on risk rating, you have to do different things with the two environments. We don't allow an app to integrate anymore without MFA. It's just a given. If you're bringing a new app into our infrastructure, you're going to integrate it with MFA. And the third one doesn't seem like a self-service portal, but it really is. All the time, I was constantly getting information requests. And literally, it was burning cycles out of the team. We built a portal for CISOs and CTOs to go and get their own information. And it had to be simple, I'm telling you. But it took so much noise out. And they started complaining, well, this data's not right. I said, well, it's your data, so correct it, and then we'll have a good dashboard. So, so it's interesting. Each of these becomes self-service. So where are your opportunities? Don't think inside the box. Look at things that you're doing, your team is doing over and over and over again. You don't always have to wash clothes by hand. You can use a washing machine, right? Look at the things that's consuming your staff. Right now, we're doing a lot of vulnerability patching. And we're actually doing a lot of building around automating vulnerability patching so that it becomes a 5-minute task rather than a 3-week patch. Now, that's not necessarily self-service, but it's a great opportunity. Where are your security risks? Right? What's keeping your CISO awake at night? What's the CERT team coming and knocking on your door about? Those are things that are good opportunities to automate because you reduce the risk. You're managing the risks to a different level. And one of the things I did when I oversaw that e-commerce website is once a week I read all of the customer. We had a feedback. And I'm going to tell you, that's a humbling experience. Try that one time. But never build a self-service capability without a feedback loop because it helps you to understand where the issues are and what's going on. So how do you do it? How do you make this stuff secure? How do you build it? And I'm not stealing from Ian. I think he stole from me. I'm using a lot of the same points, but they make sense. Know what you're trying to solve. If you think about Ian's or mine, our goal was to make it simple for app owners to integrate their apps. We were trying, in Ian's case, he was trying to get MFA rolled out. Know your endpoint. If you don't define your endpoint at the beginning, then you're going to always have a rolling endpoint. Have a vision of what it's going to look like at the end. Sometimes people can't get that vision. If you need to do a wireframe, do that wireframe, right? this is what an app integration portal is going to look like. And they go, ooh. The trick is when we first did ours, we just hacked it together over a weekend and said, hey, look, leadership. They said, oh, let's make it prod tomorrow. I said, no, give us some time to harden it. But you got to get that vision to do it. Measure before and after. And this, I'm telling you from hard experience, this is one that a lot of people miss, and it's one you will pay the price for. When I implemented the first generation of that customer service portal, I said, okay, we're not getting any in now. And so we were getting quite a few hits into the thing. And we needed to do a pretty significant infrastructure upgrade to keep the company secure and keep the application up. Well, my partner in the operations side said, you know what, I'm answering calls in less than 5 minutes. My teams are set. I don't think you need to make this upgrade. I think web views aren't the same. And I was like, well, I disagree with you, but if you guys aren't going to fund it, then we're going to live with the consequences. Outside of my control, thank God, this website failed exactly where I was asking money for. And for 2 days, the call center hold time went from 5 minutes to an hour and a half. Their call volume quadrupled. The real message here is agree on what your measuring system's going to be so that when you have the success, when you get the success, just like Ian said the other day, when you have the success, it's not that you built the technology, it's that people are using it and how you measure that technology and that it's secure, right? You know, I loved it when the attorneys would show up and they'd say, give me 5 random transactions and show me every handoff this took on electronically and how you validate it to users. I could do that. I can do that with my self-service portal. I fortunately don't need to do it for reporting. Automate strategically, right? You don't have to automate everything. Start small. Start incrementally. Like when we did the self-service portal, we started with a tiny little, these are the 3 SAML options you can choose. And saw how people used it and tailored it and grew it and grew it and grew it. Excuse me, when we first started doing financial transactions online, we literally were doing swivel desk. We would take them online and then somebody would key it into the admin system because we wanted to see what the volume was going to be. And you know, the volume started to grow and they said, ooh, this is unsustainable. And I said, well, I told you so. So we automated it from wing to wing. Know what you're trying to do. The key thing, and I touched on it earlier, are controls. Know everything. If you have a black box in your infrastructure and you don't know how stuff's flowing in and out of it, I guarantee you it will bite you, especially from a security standpoint. And at the end, there's always smart people around you. Know them, use them, take them under take them into your project. For this stuff to be successful, it's got to be simple, right? It just has to be simple. And people are going, how do you make OIDC integration simple? Well, if you really think about creating an assertion, if you've got the right security models, it's not a lot of questions you have to answer to create one, but you have to step back and think outside the box. Use those users that I just talked about, the resources, the people that know the happy path, because the people that know the happy path will also know the bear traps in the process. They'll be the ones that can tell you, oh, by the way, this is going to happen, so that you know in advance. You always build for the happy path, but you always have to know where the other opportunities are. Tailor it to your audience. The thing I built for the CISOs is different than the thing I built for developers, which is different than the thing that we built for consumers, or would be different. You've got to know your audience. You've got to target to your audience. And one thing most people don't realize, and it is very important, any self-service transaction has to have an easy exit. People will always get somewhere and not know how to move forward. No matter how much testing, no matter how much you've done, always have an easy exit. One of the things we've done with this developer community app is the easy exit is go from here into our self-service community and post your problem. And people were going, well, this is a security thing. It's okay. It's all internal to GE. Post your problem. And often developers will say, oh, I've already done that. Here's how you do it. But I also have my own team members monitoring it. And if something doesn't happen in a certain amount of time, my team members will intervene and help those people. Always have an easy exit. And last, but probably I should have put it at the top of the list, is organizational engagement. You have to have your CISO, your security team on one side of you saying, these are the things that you can do, and here's how you have to protect the company. And then you have on the other side the process owner that says, I'm going to give you the funding to do this. I want this done. And with those two people, one side and the other, you can get this done. If you don't have both of those on it, your project isn't going to work. Even internally facing projects, you've got to have it. And sometimes the process owner is a manager of 50 people. Sometimes the process owner is the CEO of one of the GE divisions. It just depends on where the sponsorship is and the scope of the project. And the one thing that's been beaten into me in all of these years of working in the company, you cannot communicate enough. You can't tell people enough. You have to, over and over again, you have to tailor the communication to the people receiving it. Ian gave the classic example yesterday of, we were saying MFA and SSO, but we weren't saying SSO MFA. People read that as SSO MFA. It's the classic miscommunication. Happens in projects constantly. I've never been in a significant effort, especially a self-service effort, that somewhere something didn't go sideways. If you have the CISO with you, the risk people on one side, and the sponsor with you on the other side, when it goes sideways and you've been communicating to them what's going on all along, usually they'll just stand right up with you and go, what does it take to get to the next level? And they'll work with you. So just to recap, you have to demonstrate an improvement, right? You have to demonstrate an improvement. It's not really a successful project if you didn't take some cost out, you didn't improve the efficiency, you have to demonstrate an improvement. Whoever your target customer is, for whatever you're building, engage them and be sure that what you're delivering for them works. We went through a lot of iterations of that self-service portal. We went through a lot of iterations of that customer service website. We got a lot of very direct feedback about that reporting system we built from senior people. Risk and security controls are not static. All of these tools I'm talking about have undergone constant security review, constant risk review, because the risks, even 6 months ago, are different than the risks of today. Automate as much as you can, but automate wisely. Don't start off, if you're planning to build a 747, don't start off trying to develop a jet engine. Start off building a Wright Flyer and then grow it into the 747. You don't have to start off with the 747. Usability is key. It just absolutely is key. If it's not simple, people won't use it. And I can't say it any plainer than that. Engagement, engagement, engagement. Engage your customer, engage your support systems, engage your leadership, communicate, communicate, communicate. And then it will help you bring these systems forward. Any questions? And by the way, if you want to buy any of these devices you've seen on the screen, I will be glad to hook you up with the people that'll sell them to you. Sure.
If I understood right, one of the products is a self-service portal for internal GE developers.
Yes.
Integrate their
SSO infrastructure. Yes.
And how, you said you iterated over that many cycles.
Yep.
Continue to today, I imagine?
Yes.
What was the biggest challenge, I guess, in all those iterations? What was the hardest part of that job?
Her question is, as we iterated through building the self-service portal for the developers, the first challenge, and there have been multiple over the years, the first challenge was getting them to use it at all, right? Because we had 30 contractors. They threw it over the wall and said, okay, I don't have to do anything to use SSO. I just can throw it over the wall and we're going to do it. But now, yeah, it's expensive. The next iteration was we started off with just very simple transactions with very few barriers to use it, because we wanted the early adopters to get in and talk about it. And then once it started getting adoption, then we started ratcheting up the controls, the security controls and those things. I would still say the biggest barrier we have is developers will figure out a way to develop something, and that's how they'll develop it until somebody tells them to stop. And learning about OIDC isn't instantaneous. The first time you do it, it takes a little time. It takes a couple weeks or sometimes a month, depending on your development team. But once they figure it out, they go, holy moly, why were we doing it any other way, right? And once they've learned OIDC and the capability of OAuth, they love it. But that's still education. So surrounding my self-service website is this cloud of documentation that we've generated so that they can learn and help. And we actually reference a lot of our vendors.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Sure. What's that?
Like how really like identity really integrate with self-service. Like how we talk about a lot of general rules.
Yep.
How identity really
Well, each identity class has its own validation processes to integrate into us. It just depends on the class of user. His question is, how do individual identities integrate into our environment, self-service? And it really does. Those self-service integrations of the identity types varies by the identity type. Like the validation we do for an employee and how an employee gets onboarded is very different than the validation that we would do for an external customer coming to buy something from us. So those all have their own self-service processes that surround it. I don't know that I answered your question. I apologize if it didn't, but maybe you can catch me in the hall. What else? Any other questions? Well, thank you for your time. And again, I'm pleased to be here, and thanks a bunch. And we're building a world that works.